Hello, good morning. Welcome to this session about alternatives to lectures in online courses, part 3. This is the last part of a trilogy of sessions that we have put together to show faculty members what other options besides just recording a lectures you can find out there. Those of you who have joined before know the format. For those of you who have not joined before this session, I encourage you to watch the first and the second part of this presentation. They're all on YouTube, in our YouTube channel. So it will be great because so far we have 19 methods that we have discussed, and we are going to share a couple more here. As I have previously said before, I strongly believe in lectures, so I don't want this presentation to be one of those mechanisms to antagonize lectures. You will hear several people now making claims that lectures they don't work, that the learners are not interested in lectures, that the brain needs to function with other instructional methods, but that's not true at all. Actually, lecture has a very important place in instruction. It's a very effective method that we have used for years, and it's just about knowing how to use it and when. It's about engagement, it's about connecting with the audience, it's about being able to convey messages and chunk content in a way that the learners can digest easily. But it's also true that in some instances the lecture doesn't work and you have to be creative and you have to think about something else. And that's why we are offering these sessions. As I said before as well, good instruction and good instructional design, they matter. That's what really matters. The technology goes and comes, it can change. You can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have a good, sound instructional foundation, it's not going to work. So that's the second thing that I want you to keep in mind as we navigate through these examples. Our goals for today is to list alternatives to this to the lectures, but also we want to be able to describe how you can implement them in the classroom. And finally, we're going to be talking about the benefits if you decide to engage in any of these methods. And with that, let's get started right away with our instructional methods, the alternatives to recorded lectures. So the first one is the action maze. And I'm sure many of you have heard of that before. And the action maze is a type of case-based learning, which you know by now, if you have been to my presentations, I'm a huge fan of. So how does it work? So basically, as I said, it's a type of case-based learning, and they have to deal with problems and dilemmas. So you have to make sure you create a situation that has an actual problem. However, the difference between this and case-based learning is that you are going to give them choices. With case-based learning, you leave it open for interpretation, you leave it open for elaborating on an answer or picking a choice. Here it's different because you are going to provide two or three options, two paths that the learner can take based on that dilemma. And after that, based on the answer, the learner is going to continue throughout a set of other activities. At the end, you might decide to bring them and find a way to create that instructional path in such a way that they come back to a common ground, a common point, or you can leave them staying at two different paths. It's really depending on you. So that's the main difference. You provide the choices, and based on the choices, instruction continues. With case-based learning, usually it's just about the discussion, justifying the choices, and you leave it there. There's more work here, however, tends to be really effective because you have a way to get feedback. My choices are going to give me feedback right away. Then I'm going to continue throughout other instructional activities, and I'm going to get more feedback and so forth. And you can increase the complexity of the dilemmas as you move forward in this instruction. So I'm going to give you an example of, let's say that I want to do this in an asynchronous class. Everybody is connected at the same time. And what you're going to do is you're going to bring everybody to the classroom and you're going to present a big problem to the rest of the class. And then you're going to have set up a couple of breakout rooms. Those of you who decide to go for A are going to join breakout room A. Those of you, after you have read this problem, this dilemma, you can go to B, C, depending how many rooms you want to have. Those who join the breakout room, depending on the breakout room, are going to find an additional situation to the problem that you can provide via text or short video, or you can have a discussion there or other resources. After they work with those, you will ask your participants to return to the main room and you kind of debrief the situation. And then you can provide another part of the problem and ask them to join another breakout room where you're going to have these activities already set up. And again, the last part is repeat. You can repeat as many times as necessary or as many times as time allows. This is very useful when you are actually working on a situation that in one session, for instance, you are delivering the content and you're actually telling your students to memorize the facts, to get all the information, but then sometimes you don't have a mechanism to clarify misconceptions, or you don't have a mechanism for them to get feedback on potential application of that piece of knowledge. This is why this is useful, and this works this way in a synchronous class. If you are going to do this in a asynchronous class, in a way it tends to be easier because you can lock the modules using this function from Canvas and open, let's say that only those who get certain scores, then this module can open. Or you can provide instructions, okay, if you chose A, take module A2 or whatever name you want to put. If you chose B, instead take module B2. So in a way, it's easier for them than when you do it asynchronously. However, in both modalities, I have seen it work. It's a little bit more of work, but rest assured that you are going to have a really good experience that engages your students because you have a multiple representations of knowledge here, and you also have the ability to have feedback. Sometimes, and I have said this a couple times before, the lack of feedback is what makes our students not be engaged throughout the whole instructional experience. So when you're using the action maze and activities, what resources do you need? I said that number one, you need the dilemma. You can just write it down, or you can have a short video. And you can also have facilitators. In some instances, you can assign one or two students and you rotate them so they take the role of a facilitator, that in a way keep the whole conversation in order and the flow of activities running in a good way. There are several educational games out there, and again, in the interest of time, I'm not gonna go through all of them. But if you ever have a question about trying to implement a serious game, an educational game, there are several for the social sciences, for math, for history, for education, for business that can really align to some of your lessons and that you can use for activities like this. So again, the purpose of this is to respect the choices that your students they make, but also that they get feedback. Okay, if you chose A, maybe that was not completely right. Therefore, you have to consider reading these materials. If you got B's right, okay, you got it right. However, you can expand your knowledge by reading or completing this activity. So I really encourage you to use YouTube also. YouTube has a wealth of videos that sometimes if we spend a good deal of time browsing the net, you will see that the content of those videos can really, really be useful for your classes. And also this tool was presented to me recently by Mariana Raider. Thank you so much, Mariana, for that. And I started checking this out, and it's a really easy tool for you to create videos, animated videos, and that will save you a lot of time. Sometimes you need something interactive to put out there that expresses the needs in these dilemmas that you're creating in these problems. And I suggest you to use that tool, that free tool, because it's really easy to use and it creates a really user-friendly experience for your students. The benefit of the action maze is that you apply and transfer knowledge. Knowledge doesn't just stay as reading and completing a multiple choice test. And you are also focusing on real world scenarios, current issues, situations that are happening. Therefore, your students are going to see the relevance of the content of your class. As I said before, also many of our students lose interest or are not interested in online learning because they feel that they're missing out in that sense of community. They don't get to build community. They don't get to network. So when you are breaking down, in groups based on the choices and they get to discuss and share thoughts, you're promoting that community building. And of course, you're promoting active learning because it goes beyond reading. You have to apply and you have to read well and you have to master content in order to be able to do well in an activity like the action maze. Okay. So let's go for number 2, the lightning talk. And I'm sure many of you have seen this format. This is very common in conferences, but it's really interesting when you use it in the actual classroom because you really make your students prepare well and masters communication skills while at the same time demonstrating that they have grasped the content of your class. So how does it work? I suggest that you set a theme. You're not gonna be able to run a whole class, the whole semester with lightning talks, but there are going to be particular topics in which you can set a theme, maybe 1 year or one instructional method or one country in which you're going to be talking about several components or aspects of the country, or you can be discussing one political or historical figure and you want to do lighting talks about different aspects of that person, career, impact, aftermath, stuff like that. So you set a theme, and in that way, your students know that all the topics are somehow connected. You want to create knowledge that connects. That connection represents a really strong representation for the brain. After that, and this is where I see that some faculty members struggle sometimes, it's that you don't provide questions. You just say, talk about this, and you give a topic. I believe the best presentations are the ones that answer specific questions. It helps the students to be focused because they know they have to answer the question, but also they keep the lighting talks or any presentation relevant because basically you are providing answers to a problem or a situation that everybody wants to know. I will ask my students to present for 5 minutes or less. So if you have, 12 students, 5 minutes each, that's 60 minutes, and you can provide some Q&A. So if you have an hour and 15 minutes, you do the math. You have to do the math to see how many students can talk through this format. So what you can do, depending on the number of students that you have, is that you choose lighting talks couple times during the semester, maybe 3, 4 times, so everyone has a chance to present using this format. Q&A is very important because your students are going to be paying attention to these talks and they might have questions about why the presenter made certain claims or focus on certain aspects over others. It's always important to provide a rubric for the talk. What is a good talk? What components or elements should be included in there? And of course, for the slides. When I say for the slides, it's because these presentations have to be picture heavy, not text heavy. That's a good practice for this. Sometimes you can ask your students optionally to submit the scripts because you want to probably see the writing skills or the thought process they put behind the presentation. And sometimes you can also ask your students to evaluate each other. That's optional. However, what I do encourage you to do in all instances is that after each lighting session happens, after everybody has talked or presented, you ask everybody to submit a little, file, something short, a little essay, bullet points, it's your choice, just about the main takeaways from the session because you want to make sure they're paying attention. You don't want a stressful assessment, but at the same time, you want them to see how that presentation shaped their thought process. So for the lightning talks, I suggest that you use Flipgrids. It's my favorite because you can not only see all of them at once. This is especially good if you are doing this in an asynchronous format. And also you can leave feedback right there and your other students can leave feedback and you can repeat and see as many times as needed. And as also with Bitable, it's very important that you ask them how to use the tool and you find a place to post it. So they can create the video in Bitable and then they can just post on Canvas the links on the placeholder or the space that you create for those. Flipgrid keeps the whole thing more organized, in my opinion. So I encourage you to use that one. If you're teaching in a synchronous format, YouTube live stream, it has really grown in me, and also people use Facebook Live. I tend to use more the YouTube function because we have a YouTube channel, so it's really up to you, and it's fully supported by Google, obviously, which it's also something that you want to consider. We are a school that is supported for Google products, so you might as well want to consider that YouTube. But I have seen faculty members using Facebook Live, and it works as well perfectly. So the benefits of the light and talk is that everybody at some point becomes the more knowledgeable other. You don't want to be always be the one presenting the content. It might get monotonous. When you put the learner into the spot of being the expert at least once and they have to prepare, you make a learning more active, more meaningful, and they become more accountable for the learning experience as well. Also, you are having an endorsement here for communication skills. It's not an easy task to answer a questions, make sure everything fits into 5 minutes. You have to be precise. You have to deliver content in a particular way that is engaging. You don't go over time. You need to know how to manage the content, how to chunk it, all of that. So that's a good endorsement for communication skills. Also, this is an opportunity for your students to make connections and use the knowledge from your classes to analyze current issues or situations that are happening around the world or any topic that you're interested in covering in class. And also, this is a way for your students to connect and to know each other better. The more opportunities you give them to do group presentations, to talk to others, to critique each other's, the more sense of community. That's one of the biggest problems in online learning. So that will be your contribution to the experience. Number 3, team-based learning. This one, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you, one of the biggest mistakes that I have made in my life, and one of those things that I'm like, oh God, I wish I go back in time and fix it, was with team-based learning. Looking back, I know exactly the mistakes that I made, and I believe that, interestingly enough, team-based learning is one of those things that is better when you do it online, more so than in person. So I would like to do it again at some point. So if any faculty member is interested in using team-based learning, hit us up because I will be person number one. I would like to use the mistakes that I made in the past to make it better this time around. But it really showed me a lot of important lessons about this specific instructional strategy because it's not easy. It's just not putting people to work. I'm sure in groups. I'm sure many of you are familiar to all the process, but I'm gonna go and explain how this will work in an online environment. So team-based learning has 3 main steps. There is a flip component, preparation before class. Nothing major there because I'm sure many of you are doing that. And basically you can ask your students to do many things. They can read something, they can do, watch a video, they can do some homework, they can complete a module, anything that you want, that you feel is necessary for them before coming to class. Here's where things come a little different. When they come to class or whenever they join the class, they have to engage in something called readiness assurance testing. And this is how it works. They come to class, and the first thing that they do is that they take an individual test. After that, They will take the same test, but in groups, in teams that you have assigned for them. After that, and in the real classroom, you have those scratch sheets that you can actually get, and it reveals the answers right away. With online, it's easier because if you have this in Canvas, they can get the answers right away. After that, they see how they did, and there's the possibility of appeals. So the groups can appeal if they felt a question was not well formulated, or something was wrong with the grading, or something was missing or not clear. They can do an appeal. And then the instructor has the opportunity to provide feedback based on those appeals or anything they noticed during the time that the test they took a place. Both the individual test and the group test, both they count towards the grade. So it's very important that you can prepare individually and you cannot just rely on your team because both scores are going to count. And after that, then you do an in-class application focus exercise and discussion. You assign the same problem to all the teams, and they have to discuss the strategies and use content to solve it. And you're going to navigate around the teams to find any misconceptions, to help them understand certain concepts, and just to see how they're evolving in their thought process. So as you can see, it's very complex. And the mistake that I made is that it was a class that it was too big. There were 15 groups, 5 groups each. That's too much. I will not do this with social art class again. So I encourage this for classes that are smaller in size. It was fun to plan it and to do the whole thing, but it was difficult in real life when we saw the whole thing running. So I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say that you want to do this for your online class. And I really suggest that you do this synchronously. I will not encourage you to do this asynchronously. Obviously, because of the team-based component and interaction, you have to make sure people are available at the same time. Now, let me tell you, if this is to be done online, I feel really optimistic because of how a couple things happen, and I'm gonna explain that in a second. So this is what you do. Before class, you're going to ask your students to complete a Canvas module. Again, it can be a reading, it can be videos, a journal article, anything that you want them to read before class. You also create 2 identical quizzes. Just make sure you name them a little different. You can be like test 1, individual, test 2, group. Make sure they're locked and that they're open by the time your students come to that class live. You then say, okay, time to take your quiz. Everybody's going to take their time quiz. Don't make it too long. I will say 5 to 10 questions, no more than that. And then make sure this quiz, the individual one, it doesn't reveal any feedback, no score, no right, no wrong answer, nothing. After that, you're going to create also another one that it's going to be in groups. Same questions, but this one you are going to set it up in such a way that the students get the feedback and the scores at the end. That's key, and that's the main difference. And then you have to create an application exercise. A case-based learning kind of situation will be ideal. And that will be the same for all of the groups. So I think here, the time-consuming part besides the Canvas module is just the settings for the quizzes. That's pretty much it because it's the same quiz, just the setting changes. So that's how you prepare before class. The day of class, when they come to WebEx, let's say, you are going to have already the multiple breakout rooms set up, 5, 4, depending on your number of teams. Then you're going to ask your students, okay, go to Canvas. By then, the quiz is going to be opened. Take it. After 10 minutes or whatever time, whenever time is up, you say, stop. That's good. Now, based on your teams, go to this breakout room. Your students are going to be in those breakout rooms, and one person per group is going to take the second exam. During that time, they can discuss, they can share, and obviously they will put answers that it's what everybody agrees with, or at least the majority. This second exam that they're taking in groups is going to provide them right away the feedback so they will know what they got right or wrong and the score. This is why I love it when it comes to TBL in an online setting. Because if you do this in the classroom, you have to buy these special sheets that people scratch to be able to see the right or wrong answers. With something like Canvas, you don't have to worry about that. So that's the benefit of doing something like this. After they see their score and see how how well they did and all that, they come to the main room and they have the opportunity to do an appeal. Maybe not, but sometimes it happens. Then you ask them to go back to your breakout room and you let them work on this application exercise. When I do these exercises, I like the team to answer 2 or 3 questions because you need a deliverable. You need to know that they're investing that time into a rich discussion. And then they can submit that by Teams and you later on grade that. You navigate, the rooms, you facilitate these questions, and you're there for question and answers. So this is team-based learning, and I understand that it's a lot, but that's the way this methodology works. That's why some people don't like it. That's why some people will never do it. Other people love it. There's a whole conference out of this, and there are some faculty members that they have given it a try, and for some reason they fell in love with it that they never left the methodology. I have seen this in biology a lot. So if you're interested in, getting into this, let me know because I know it's a lot. It's a very complex process, but it's worth a try if you believe that flip/collaboration components are missing in your class for engagement. What I like about this is very low tech. It's very low tech in my opinion. You only need the 6 for WebEx that we all have. You need Canvas to put the content. You can use something like Mentimeter and Google Forms. Both are free, and those can help you for the appeals section or for those discussions. You don't want everybody speaking at the same time. I love using Mentimeter because it produces the word clouds. You have contests, you have polls, like it has everything. And Google Forms also it's good because of the data analytics parts when you ask a question. So the benefits of team-based learning is that, of course, it promotes collaboration and accountability, big time accountability, because if you don't study, you are affecting your team. And long term, knowing that your performance can affect a whole team really develops accountability for a student. It really clarifies misconceptions because you have so many assessments, you have so many multiple opportunities to demonstrate knowledge and to answer questions, that if you are having the ground ideas or your thought process is not going in the right direction, you're going to know right away because of the excessive amount of feedback that you get, not only in the content, not only from the instructor, not only from the exam, but also from the classmates. You have so many opportunities there. Obviously, fosters active learning. Students get to know each other really well, so you provide that opportunity to network, something they love. And also, as I said, you have multiple opportunities to check your understanding, not only 1 or 2. You have several in just one class. And as I say, it's low tech, so something to consider. Again, if after this you feel like, hey, I want to try TBL, shoot me an email. I will be person number 1 making it happen for you. Number 4, the expert review. This is one that I really love because of how it starts preparing students for the workplace, especially those students in design, in architecture, in computer science, in the sciences, in education, in many, many fields. The expert review, it's about asking your students to develop something really soon, and you're going to provide multiple opportunities for feedback based on the prototype that they present, and they have to apply those revisions. and they have to show improvement over that revision at the very end. And your students are going to present this to the class, and they are going to also be able, in some cases, to work with a subject matter expert. So the way it works is the following. You're going to assign a deliverable to your students. And the expert review is something that also, like the light and talk, can happen a couple times a semester. You don't spend the whole semester using it. But what happens is like you decide, okay, there's a final product at the very end. Maybe it's a research proposal, maybe it's an online module, maybe it's a software prototype, a game, something. You're going to ask your students to develop a rapid prototype, and they have to document that process, either recording it or journaling, or maybe just discussing on a board somewhere. They have to document the process that they follow when they build that prototype. They have to present that prototype to the classmates. And this is the part that I really like, because when you see your other classmates applying a different thought process and you see their prototypes, you get some ideas for yourself, and you learn from their mistakes and the lessons that they also learn in the process. You have to provide constructive feedback, because each time they present these, you're going to suggest revisions. And I suggest that you do this 2 or 3 times. Again, the difference between these and other things that you might have done is that they have to do that presentation, they have to do a complete prototype, and then you repeat with these revisions. So hopefully by the last round, you might have just a couple of minor comments, but then after that, it's ready for submission. In some instances, you might want to bring an additional subject matter expert. You are in many cases, but I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that I'm a computer science faculty member, and I'm teaching my my students to develop a game. But let's say that the game is about math. I'm not a math expert. I might bring a colleague from the math department to be with me in these expert reviews presentations, because I will be paying attention to computer science and the principles behind developing that game. But the subject matter expert is going to make sure that mathematically the game is sound. So that's why I love that. One of my research lines talks about this. I have a presentation next month, and based on the data that I have collected, students have enjoyed a lot that combination of the rapid prototyping and the subject matter expertise. They feel that they have been like actually at the workplace. They really see meaningful experiences when they have to develop something for a client. What you can do, that many faculty members do as well, is that they pick a project on campus that is happening or for a company. And your students have to develop and deliver something that is going to be used by that department or for that company. So keep an eye on opportunities for your students to do something that fills a gap or a need on campus or for a company, because based on that and research, students appreciate that a lot. And this might work for you, especially in the higher level courses when you are really hands-on. When I say prototypes and deliverables, and the expert review comes from computer science, but it has been adopted by other fields as well. It can be a presentation, it can be a research proposal, it can be a recorded teaching demonstration. It evolves over time. It can be a syllabus or a graphic, a drawing, a visual, something that they have to continue working on throughout the semester. Or it can be working with a client. Every week you have to work with a client, because at the end you have to submit something. Show me what you have done. I give you feedback. You refine your prototype, you present, and we continue. And again, the way I envision this is that you spend couple of sessions a semester just on these prototyping presentations. Students learn from these prototype presentations sometimes even more than the lecture, because they really see the application of content. The technologies that I suggest here are for all rubrics, and again, all of these are free, because this one creates rubrics, badges, and certificates, and all of those things that you need when the expert review takes place. I like Trello a lot because the expert review it's about project management, and that's a tool that helps you do that. And obviously Flipgrid because sometimes you want a recording of the demonstration, and Flipgrid has a really organized way of seeing all of those demonstrations in one spot. By the way, on Thursday at 2 p.m., we're having a presentation about teaching with Flipgrid with Brandon Wallace and Terry Lugler from my team. Don't miss it out because as you've seen, I have mentioned that tool a lot. So don't miss it out. We're going to be teaching you some cool strategies for using that in your online courses. So the benefits of the expert review is that it prepares your students for working with clients. Prototyping is something that's very common. That relationship, customer, client, employee, the ability to gather feedback, to apply feedback, to refine, very important. It ensures that your deliverable is user friendly in cases that we're talking about something that has to do with software, but it also ensures that what we're trying to do makes sense for the larger community, for users, for people. It fosters an agile mentality. And when I say agile, I'm using agile from the project management, computer science mindset. An agile mentality is the ability to see a problem, create a tangible solution to that problem, a deliverable, and work through several rounds of feedback to refine it until it's ready. Before, the development of products and experiences was really linear. You had to go linearly, and sometimes you did not get to interact with your client or the final user until the very end. And sometimes it was too late to get feedback then. However, when you have an agile mentality, you start hands on really fast and you start having those conversations with the expert early on, and you have multiple opportunities to refine your product. It really helps your students work with project and time management because they learn how to take a big project and chunk it and create milestones along the way so it's completed by a certain deadline. And also it promotes a long-term application of knowledge because this is not a one-time incident, a one-time project. They actually have to apply knowledge throughout the whole semester working on that deliverable. Okay. Number 5, the community of inquiry. It's very different from the community of practice, and this is something that some courses can be taught the whole semester using a community of inquiry approach, especially if you're doing something more capstone, something more advanced. But also you can devote 4 weeks a semester just on this community of inquiry. So for those of you who are not familiar, the framework of the communities of inquiry is telling us, especially in an online course, that you need to have teaching presence, social presence, and cognitive presence. So that combination of you as a faculty member guiding your students, it's very important. Sounds obvious, but sometimes people advocate that communities of inquiries and practice it's on the learners, and some faculty members believe that they don't have a role. When that's the case, that's not true. The best communities of inquiry or practice strongly depend on the teaching, planning it, and guiding the process. Those who just leave the students alone, they don't work. So your role might switch as a facilitator, but it's very important in the design of them as well and the feedback. The social presence is important because when you have a community of inquiry, your students get to network, they get to socialize, they get to build a community, they get to feel that they are working together on something. And then obviously the cognitive presence is going to be meaningful content. Don't create this if you don't have quality of content or just because you want them to hang out or be together. For this to work, they have to find content and they have to be working on issues that are meaningful, that are relevant. So those three things are very important. So some suggestions that I have if you want to incorporate these is that at least consider using 6 weeks. I have done it for 6, I have done it for 12. I think when it's 12, it's too much. Less than that, less than 6, it's too aggressive and people get a little overwhelmed. I think 6 is a good number. For me, it's magic 6 when it comes to doing things like this. You're going to become a facilitator. So if you are looking forward to not being a lecturer for a good chunk of that semester or for the whole semester, this is a good choice for you. And you're going to be heavily flipping the classroom. So your work it's going to be before class, and they have to come prepared to class, and you're going to leave work for them to do after class. But once they are in class, your role is going to completely shift. I suggest that you create a very specific deliverable for each session. One of the biggest mistakes of these communities is when you have it anything goes. People believe that they should not have structure, that they discuss, that they talk. If they don't feel that discussion, the conversation, or the activities are taking them somewhere, they lose engagement. So to help them stay focused, to help them apply knowledge, to make it meaningful and relevant, you need to create a deliverable for each session. And I know some faculty don't like using that, but I really encourage you to integrate social media, because when these community of inquiries take place, the level of connection that your students need to have has to go beyond just the Canvas discussion board. And I don't want to necessarily say they have to trade phone numbers and all of that, but social media is the perfect medium between something too personal and something too academic. Everybody, most of people are using some sort of social media. You can benefit from the hashtagging. You can also involve people outside of that community as well, and you can showcase their work through social media. So I'm going to give you an example of how I can do a community of inquiry in a class that I will teach. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that I'm teaching instructional design 101. One of the main things that I want my learners to do is to design an online course. That's my goal. You cannot make it after 101 if you don't know how to design an online course. Basic. So my deliverable for that, it's okay, show me a course design plan, because that's the first thing that you do when you work with faculty. We're gonna design a course plan, okay? So the next thing that I will do, I'm gonna conduct a task analysis, and I'm gonna break down all the components of that course design plan. What elements belong to that course design plan? I'm gonna break it down. Okay, then I realize, okay, I have X amount of steps to complete that. So I'm gonna find the readings, the videos, the discussions, quizzes, anything, and I'm gonna connect it to each of those milestones, those steps. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and schedule. A course design plan, honestly, I can teach my students to do that in 6 weeks easily. So I can use the other 6 weeks to lecture, to do debates, to do video-based learning, whatever I want. So based on that, I can do it 6 weeks perfect. So I schedule it. Now, I'm going to give an example of that task analysis that I mentioned. My deliverable is a course design plan. What are the elements of my course design plan? I need to talk about the rationale, the learning objectives, the assessments, and so forth. I have 6 steps there. So I have already my 6 weeks. So that's what you have to do. You have to break down your deliverable. And then under each one of those milestones, you're going to put your materials, your readings, what needs to happen. If I'm running this, all I do is the following. I create my 6 modules, and I put the things that I have to read for each module. I give a deadline for my students. That deadline means, okay, week 1 of this community of practice, I want to see the rationale. Week 2, I want to see the learning objectives. Week 3, your deliverable is going to be the assessment strategy. So every week, you are going to give them content and they have to do something. Everyone has to submit their own course design plan, but as a community of inquiry, they can do whatever they want to help each other. Obviously, you will see if somebody is, using somebody else's because they cannot be identical. But that's when you leave them the freedom to decide how they want to interact when they meet together as a group. They can discuss, the rationale part, what are the challenges, what elements they believe they're outdated, and things like that. So that's basically the planning. So what happens is during the time this is running, you're going to ask your students to complete the activities before they come to class or before the week where that community of practice is going to be open. I suggest that you start each session with some guiding questions or key points. It can be very short. If it's synchronous, you do it synchronously via WebEx. If it's asynchronous, you record that. I also believe that in some instances, you can do a mini lecture. Trust me, it's really effective if you do a mini lecture. And when I say mini, it's 5 minutes or less. And you can record that as well. Many faculty members and many proponents of the community of inquiry, they say that there should not be such a structure and that you should give more freedom. But no, because when I have collected feedback about some of the ones that I have run, when I don't have the structure, they don't like it. They tend to like it when there's a structure. And some of them, they say, hey, I wish I had homework and more things to do just to stay focused, just to see why this is relevant. So consider having a structure because that's what guides the process effectively. Now, make sure you have a deadline for the deliverable. If it's weekly, if it's just tell them ahead and that they have to individually submit that deliverable, but they can work on their own. Okay, so that's basically the process. You can do it for the whole semester because you're going to be flipping the classroom, but you can also do it for just a chunk of that if you believe you don't need the 12 weeks for this. And again, I have done this before as well. So if you want to integrate this and I'm not really sure about how to start, let me know. There's a difference between the community of inquiry and the community of practice. I have run both. The community of inquiry is, in my opinion, for learners who are about to start getting to know the content. They are not familiar with the content. Whereas I suggest the community of practice when you have expertise, because as the word said, it's a community of practitioners who have some experience and therefore they can share a thing or two. When you're just starting to get familiar with the content, it's more like a community of inquiry. So the technologies that I suggest for this is Trello because they have to manage that project. So it's a very good tool. And I will definitely take advantage of the whole Google Suite because they are going to be working in teams. And you in this instance want to make sure they have tools that are collaborative in nature. We have them all with the except of the Gmail at UNCP. But that's not really a deal breaker. They can definitely use all the others. So the benefits of the community of inquiry is that it's considered by many the ultimate social learning experience because they're pretty much on their own working towards getting resources to finalize the deliverable with the minimum intervention from the instructor with the exception of the feedback at the end. It ensures the projects are well managed because you have a very solid structure about how to break down a deliverable. It promotes networking. And again, I'm huge into promoting networking in an online course. And also, you are working towards solving a problem or creating an artifact. In some instances, you are forced to read more because okay, this week I have to deliver an assessment plan. And I'm not fully sure how. I mean, I have to go back to my materials and read in order to create my own. So that's why you keep them on track, and that's why I like it. And then the last one that I want to talk to you about is competency-based learning. Competency-based learning is something that doesn't have a full universal definition. There are many ways in which people are defining this. But if we go back to the fundamentals and some common areas that everybody agrees on, and I'm using this module from the US Department of Education, It's about competencies. It's about demonstration of those competencies that go beyond just a test or an exam. That means that me as a teacher, me as instructor, more so than focusing on, okay, complete module one, complete module two, I change my mindset for you to develop specific competencies, being a global citizen, be an ethical scholar, be an expert in technology, be digitally fluid when it comes to something. Those are the things that you are more focused on, more so than module one, module two, lesson four, lesson five. That's basically the mindset in there. You take into account what the learner brings to the table, the characteristics and the traits, and also the learning experiences, the previous learning experiences. Then, through your classes and your content, you're making sure you use that and you give new skills, you give new abilities and new knowledge, but they are translated into specific competencies. And you find assessments that actually endorse them, like a badge or a certificate, instead of just a grade. You're basically preparing them for the workplace. So some considerations for competency-based learning. This is a long-term commitment. This is not something that can be fully done in just one course. I decided to close with this specific method because I believe firmly that this is the direction that we have to move forward to if we want to engage more online learners. That's something that our students want. But keep in mind that this is a long-term commitment, cannot happen just in one course. This is something that should be fostered by a whole academic program. It professionalizes learning. It makes students start thinking about the workplace and competencies and skills, just not a class, just not a grade. And then prior learning assessments, for those of you who are not familiar, a prior learning assessment is basically using a previous experience, work experience, a certificate to, in a way, translate that into a course so they don't have to take it again. So that's something that you consider with competency-based learning. So many people ask, but why? Why is this something that we have to consider? Well, first of all, because your students, they go to college to get jobs. People love learning, they like the college experience and all of that, but at the same time, they want to get a job, and that's something that you have to understand. We have to understand. Also, because there are experiences that can count towards that degree. Also, because when you do competency-based learning, badging is something that you can give to your students and other credentials, and that increases motivation and their marketability as well. And it fosters authentic and meaningful learning because they're going to be learning something that is meaningful to them. So what can you do, even though I say this is something more programmatic, but what can you do in your courses to start fostering competency-based learning? Well, when you ask your students to complete an assignment, or when you're choosing the content for your classes, make sure those contents are connected to skill, and you market that. You tell them, hey, those are some skills that you're gonna get, specific work skills that you can get. You can also encourage your students to improve their e-portfolios. If they don't have one, they can create one, or they can improve their e-portfolios. That's essential to get many jobs. Also, you can ask your students to complete reflections after each assignment or activity. That's key, and that really prepares people for the job interview and to really reflect on their journey. You can consider adopting a badging system, use badges in your courses. And you can also use a learning contract. So that way your students are working on projects that you specifically find are good for the class because they match your learning outcomes, but are also meaningful to them. And as I said, for all rubric is a good tool for this, to create those rubrics and to create the badges. That tool allows you to create badges and other reward systems. And Portfolio, which is integrated with Canvas, is an e-portfolio tool that your students can use to showcase their work. And with that, after these 3 presentations that I have done, I just want to remind you of a couple things. Online teaching can be effective, but it's effective when well designed. Only when well designed this is effective. Good instruction is key because the technology can change. It's just a medium to deliver the content, to enhance it. But if instruction is poorly designed, it's not going to work. I suggest that you use a good mix of all of these methods. I have presented you with 25 methods. Mix and match. I would love to have, a mix as a student so people don't get bored. All of them are useful. All of them can work. It's knowing when to use it and how to use it. And I always say that sometimes you have to take a risk. Sometimes you must take a risk to make a difference. Sometimes we think we're doing something completely outrageous, but those outrageous risks is what really keeps our students engaged and what makes teaching and learning overall better. And that's the last thing that I wanted to share. Thank you so much for joining me in this trilogy of sessions. If you have any questions, you know how to find me, where to find me. We're happy to help, me and my team. And at this point, if you have any questions, let me know. Well, thank you for the feedback, Rita. Yes, I agree. The cognitive inquiry works before the COP. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to let you go. If you have any questions again, just let me know. And we're happy to chat with you in detail. Thanks. Have a good day.